Tracy Moore from graphicskit.com, and in this tutorial I'd like to show you how to create the comic strip timelines using the kit that I've given you. It's very easy. There's a few steps. You need to have some photos ready for your comic strip, and ideally a little storyline or some sort of little gag or funny kind of thing or whatever. You need to have your photos ready. If you don't have photos that you've taken yourself, you can do as I'm doing and you can use stock photos. Once you've got your photos, we need to apply the comic actions that will turn those photos into comic strip type photos. Then we'll need to put those photos into the timeline cover template that we've got, and you'll then add some speech bubbles and some little pieces of text. Okay, so let's begin by applying some actions to the photos. As I said, I'm using some stock photos, so I'm just going to open those. Once we've opened them, I'll run these actions by clicking on the action icon here and opening the action panel. I'm going to run Comic Action Book 1 by pressing play, and you can see now that that action has been applied to that photo. So let's do the same for the second photo, and let's do the same for the third photo. Okay, so now that the photos have been turned into sort of comic-y type photos or images, we'll need to go ahead and add them to the timeline template. So let's open the timeline template by clicking File, Open, and navigating to the templates and clicking Cover 4 and selecting Open. Okay, so this opens our timeline template with 3 image panels for the comic strip, and you'll see in the layers panel that each of these is a smart object. It's got a strange little thumbnail here, and with smart objects, when you double click them, it'll open the layer as a new file. That's the file that you'll add and edit your image to. So let's take the first image and let's drag it into the file. Okay, you can see that it's a little bit big, so let's select Command or Control T, and let's hold on the Shift button while we drag on the corners of this image to keep the proportions while we decrease the size. Okay, so I'm just moving that into position with the Move tool, and let's select Close and Save, and you can see that the first image has now been added. So let's close that one, and let's now go ahead and do the same thing to add the second image. We'll double click on the smart object, select OK, we'll drag the image in like this. Let's close that image and get it out of the way, and let's now once again Command or Control T and hold Shift while we decrease the size of the image and position it. Might also rotate this little one a little bit so it gives the impression of motion. Okay, so that's optional. Obviously that applies just to this particular type of image that I'm doing because of the small little story that's there with it. So let's close that and click Save. And finally the third image, we'll need to double click on the smart object again, and we'll need to drag this in here, and once again Control or Command T, Shift and drag to decrease and position. And finally close and save. Okay, so now we have our 3 images for the comic strip in place, and what we need to do next is we need to add the comic speech bubbles that will give it the real cartoon strip effect. So let's do that. The first thing you'll need to do is select the shapes by clicking on U. You'll see up here that you've got some options for all the different shapes that are already installed in the shapes library, but you've also got this sort of cog image here. So if you click on that, you'll see the option for loading shapes. You navigate to the shapes that have been included in the kit, you select them and you click Open. They'll then be appended to all the other shapes that are already there and ready to use. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is we're going to add in this sort of thought bubble by holding Shift while dragging. Let's move the layer up to the very top above the other photos so that we can see it. And I'm just going to select DX on the keyboard so that the swatches here default to black and white, so we don't always have to change the speech bubble to white. So it'll be white by default now. Okay, so we can move that into position. You can see that it extends a little bit over the next image, and the way to fix that is to drag the shape layer above the first picture as it is now and right click, create clipping mask. So now it removes the part that extends over the other image. So let's position that properly by clicking on Control or Command T and selecting flip horizontal so that it's coming from the other direction. Okay, The next thing we need to do is create a new layer and add some text by clicking on the type tool and choose a font like Comic Sans or something silly and type in the text. Oh no, I'm late for the office. And let's select black so that we can actually see the text and position it here. Okay, so let's do one final thing. Let's stroke the speech bubble by clicking on the shape layer, selecting effects and clicking stroke, and let's make it a black stroke of 3 and select OK. Okay, so that's how you add the speech bubbles. I'm going to pause the video while I add the speech bubbles for the other 2 images. Okay, so I've repeated that process and I've just added in the speech bubbles to the other 2 comic strips, and you can see now that it's more or less complete. All that you've got to do now is choose File, Save for Web and click Save. And your file is ready to upload now as a timeline cover to your Facebook profile. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, have fun with it, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.